Hello and welcome to this VE-Cast, a Vendux podcast titled The Next Stage CEO. Today I'm joined by John Barrows. He's the founder and CEO of JB Sales based in Boston, Massachusetts. John brings 30 years in sales. That's 5 years more than I have. He built the fastest growing IT services company in Massachusetts 3 years running and then sold it to Staples. And then he took over a training firm called Basho before going solo and scaling JB Sales to about 6 million in AR. And we'll be hearing that story later on. Today, he trains many of the world's best reps and is rebuilding his company to be leaner around AI.
Hmm.
John, welcome to the VE-Cast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Henning. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I already mentioned you got 30 years in sales, five more than I do. Take us back to the start when you started out in sales. I always ask, why sales? Why didn't your parents tell you that that's a low reputation profession and you
Yeah.
become a lawyer or a doctor?
Yeah, I think that's the case, right? Like politicians are the floor, then it's sales, then it's lawyers, right? So, and I think that ultimately comes down to the perception of sales that we'll address, but not the reality of it. But yeah, I mean, to make a long story, so I grew up in Boston, still live here. Kind of went down to Maryland for college, drank my way through 4 years of college. Didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so I got my degree in marketing because it was pretty relatively easy, and it combined the things that I was decent at. But then when I got out into the real world and started looking for jobs, like none of the marketing jobs really sat well with me, right? It was, you had to be the entry level person to the assistant to the assistant to the assistant, get a paid a salary, and then move up one. And I always knew, from me personally, that I knew I wasn't the smartest kid out there, but I knew I had a strong work ethic. And to me, that's why I was a waiter all the way through college. Like I always felt like if I was going to work harder than everybody else, then I should probably get paid more. But sales wasn't a profession back then. Well, it was a profession. Sorry, it wasn't an education. Like you couldn't get your degree in it. And so I got lucky or fortunate in that Black and Decker and DeWalt hire out of Maryland, and they had this swarm team thing, which was effectively event marketing, but they bundled it under sales. So it was kind of like this sales marketing thing where I had to drive around giving away tools to construction workers, which was pretty cool. I did that for about 6 months, was one of the top reps in the region. Then they promoted me to Home Depot, which is where I started selling a little bit more because Home Depot obviously had to buy DeWalt, but I had to take that $20,000 order and make it a $50,000 order through relationships and cross sell, upsell stuff. Then after that, I went to Xerox, and that's where I got my formal sales education. The Xerox 8-week sales training program, they were really world renowned in that. And I mean, talking about selling a commodity, right? Like, I mean, copiers, I not even sold copiers. I sold copiers to the government, right? So it was even worse. And that's why I learned how to take rejection and solution selling or whatever. And but then the corporate didn't really fit for me, and so I got into startups with a friend of mine who started a IT services company, and that's the one. 23 years old, no idea what I was doing. Took every training out there, Sandler, Miller, Hyman, Taz, spin all of it, and ended up coming across Basho, and it was a training that resonated because it was very tactical. So I used it, the fastest growing company for about 3 years in a row in Massachusetts, sold it off to Staples, smashed into the corporate world again, which, I almost have an allergic reaction to. They fired me, offered me another position, joined Basho as one of the trainers. And then long story short, they screwed it up. I took it over and went off and took Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, Dropbox, all the clients that I was working with and training, scaled that up to about 6 million and 20 employees. And then 2023 hit. All my clients were in tech and SaaS, fell down. I went from 6 million to 0 in 2 months and had to rebuild again. And now it's me and my COO, and I'm leveraging a lot of the AI tools right now to the next, stage of this journey, which is an interesting one.
Yeah. So what were these early years of owning JB Sales like when you were in scaling mode and in growth mode and took it up to 6 million? What were the things that you did that really worked for you?
Looking back on it again, understanding that my main industry was SaaS and tech, right? And when Basho kind of went belly up and fired us all and left the training on the side of the road to die, I remember I've always said I'm not the smartest person out there, but I'm an opportunist. And I think one skill that I do have is I can usually look at situations, and if there's 2 or 3 data points, I'm like, okay, yep, that makes sense. And I don't overanalyze, I just execute. And I remember vividly, we were sitting there and it was 2007, I think, 2008, when it was just, everything was on fire. And we all got fired. But we had this client list because he had just left the training on the side of the road to die. And so I was like, hey, what if we created our own little training org, took over those clients, we'll pay you a residual, we'll go from there. And I sat down with the other 2 trainers in the office, and we had all the clients up on a whiteboard, and we were talking about like who was going to take which one, because we had experience on different ones. And there was, when I tell you the logos were insane, there were SAP, Monster.com at the time, Gartner, Forrester, like some big, huge companies. And, and I had trained some of them, but there was one on there, it was Salesforce. And Salesforce was Salesforce, but it wasn't Salesforce back then, right? But I saw them and I knew this. I had this thing about the cloud industry. I kind of figured it out early. Like this is not a fad. This is going. And so I kind of pretended like I wanted all those clients. Like I fought with it, but I really just wanted, because I knew if I got Salesforce as my first client and over delivered for them, that the rest of the SaaS industry would be like shooting fish in a barrel. And that's effectively what happened. So I got them. I was on a plane every single week, flying all around Asia, you name it. And I just really over-serviced them, and they became my marquee client. And then all the other SaaS just wanted effectively to be like Salesforce. And back then, you look back at how good was I versus timing. I think timing is a big piece of entrepreneurship, obviously. Yes, I was good at what I did, but I was also right place, right time for what we were doing. I mean, everything was up and to the right. I positioned 2010 to 2022 as the golden age of sales, specifically in SaaS and tech.
In SaaS, yeah.
Because if you got into sales in SaaS and tech after 2010, sorry, it hadn't been that hard. Like, we've been able to blast out template emails to anybody with a pulse, setting up disco calls, asking dumbass bant questions, droning through demos and offering discounts. Like, that's been sales for the past 15 years in the tech industry. And it was a tolerated thing because money was free, grow at all costs, who cares? So, did I make some good decisions? Sure. Was I talented? Absolutely. But was a lot of it the circumstance and the industry that I picked? Absolutely. Now, the decision I think that I did make was getting Salesforce. Because if I hadn't, I don't think my career would have taken off the way it did.
Yeah. So a marquee client is sort of the key tactic or the key strategic element that really worked for you.
Well, and I coach entrepreneurs on this a lot too. It's like when you go off on your own, it's really tempting to take money from anybody. You know what I mean? Because a lot of you need money, you need revenue, right? But all revenue is not created equal. And a lot of times you chase bad revenue because you need it. The problem with chasing bad revenue is that when I say that, like clients that don't exactly fit your ideal customer profile, they're not exactly what you can do. And so you end up stretching and you end up doing okay work, probably average, but not great. And they're usually clients that are going to suck the life out of you. And so all the time that you're going to spend working with these clients and doing a mediocre result is taking you away from finding the clients that you can do great work for. So, I always tell entrepreneurs, like, you need a 6-month runway here. If you're not going to go for funding or anything like that, you need 6 months where you don't have to worry about revenue, so you can take your time and find the right clients. Because once you do, then you start building case studies, then you start building use cases, and you know where you fit, and then you can tell the world about it and go find people that fit that profile. So I think that's just like every client I teach, whether it's an organization or individual, one of the first steps we go is let's get detailed on your ideal customer profile and really think about the nuances here, not just the basic like industry size, number of employees, that type of crap, right? But like what tech stack, what stage of the business are they? What's the size of the department that you're selling into? Like the tighter you can get on that, and then you figure out what their problems are, how to speak that language, and then go, the better off you're going to be. Because the broad brushed approach right now is just not working. You have to be super specific. And by the way, your ICP changes literally almost monthly at this point based on how fast things are moving.
Yeah. Speaking about the problem that you mentioned, when you singled out Salesforce initially for yourself, I would argue that even back then there were thousands of sales training companies out there. So what made you special, and what core problem were you able to solve for them that others apparently weren't?
Yeah, well, I use my own. That's one of the reasons I never wanted to be a trainer. Quite frankly, when Basho gave me the offer to become a trainer, even though I loved this content and it worked for me, I didn't like most sales trainers I had come up against at that point in my career were either failed sales professionals or professional presenters. So I never really wanted to be a trainer. I love sales. Now, just so happens I realize I'm pretty decent at sharing information and getting people to understand concepts and stuff like that. And so Basho had the model where you had to sell to train. So you couldn't just be a trainer. You had to literally use these techniques and sell, and then that was your training. And so we did. We used back then it was called the Basho email approach, which was now it's kind of been overplayed, but it was about a hyper personalization. You go on, you find a trigger event, you make a connection, and you fire it off to the executive. Executive gets referred down, and then you set up a meeting from there, and it worked. So we sent emails to George Hugh, who was the CMO, and Frank Vander. I always forget how to pronounce his last name, but he was the EVP of sales. And both of those got referred down to this gentleman by the name of Doug Landis, who was running all the onboarding. And they had a need for prospecting because they were onboarding so many people. Mm-hmm. And so with that, with my prospecting approach to going after the executive to get down to the person that was training the teams and the onboarding for prospecting, literally the executive says, we want our reps to prospect like this. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, you already used the phrase, I think it was like money was free back then, right? So, and you already said it influenced the fact that it was part of your success.
Of course.
So what's different today, and what do especially SaaS sellers have to do differently today?
Oh, that's a big topic, my friend. Everything's different today.
We have another 10, 15 minutes.
So. I was going to say, we got to, this is more like a therapy session at this point than anything else. But yeah, look, everything's different. AI fundamentally changed everything. I knew 2 years ago when AI, 2023, when everything fell apart for me, it was this weird perfect storm, right? Because the Silicon Valley Bank, money, I wish I did pay a little bit more attention in college to my econ class about what interest rates do to the economy. I just associated with my credit card and mortgage rate. I didn't realize venture capital. Yeah, that actually makes sense. So not only did that happen, but also, AI got introduced. And as soon as I saw ChatGPT, I said, we're in trouble because this thing's already super smart. And I can see it getting smarter, right? This is kind of like the Terminator, right? Skynet. I kind of made the connection this is different. And so I think now what happens, for those, when I say 2010 to 2022, golden age of sales, again, we taught reps far more on structure and process, and we kind of forgot the fundamentals. And so we, and I did a presentation at Pavilion, which is a CRO group a little while ago called Anything But Predictable, which is my opinion, even as much money as I've made on the predictable revenue model, I think the predictable revenue model ruined sales. The segmentation of roles, right? Inbound, then outbound, then AE, right? All that stuff. It turned it into this assembly line. And look, I'm a science guy. When you talk about sales as science art, I actually think sales should be more of a science than an art, because the science, the structure, the process, that puts us in position to learn the art and get better at the art. But without the right structure, it falls apart. The problem is we have way over scienced art. Way over science sales. Yeah. And we've lost the art. And so now we've turned all these reps into robots, and unfortunately they're getting replaced by robots. And with AI, that's the fundamental thing that I'm worried about. All these people are talking about all these AI tools and worried about automating. I'm not worried about those at all, as a matter of fact. What I'm worried about is when the client wakes up and realizes they don't really need us. And I say that because as a solopreneur, two people in my company, about a month and a half ago, I made the switch from ChatGPT to Claude, and then Claude Cowork. And when I started to figure out Claude Cowork, I wrote a blog post. You can see the subject line was, I know Kung Fu, like the Matrix. Remember when Neo wakes up from the Matrix and he's like, I know Kung Fu, right? Mm-hmm. And then it Tank's I've never seen somebody ingest so much. That was me. And I was so I spent a weekend being oh my Lord, look at all the stuff that I can do. And then at the end, I started to be oh, wait a minute here. I don't think I'm ever going to talk to a sales rep ever again in my life. Now, small business, 2 people, but because Claude knows my strategy, it helped me build my strategy. I talk to it every day about my strategy. If I need something, Claude's probably going to recommend it to me, by the way. And if I bring it an idea, it's going to go do all the research, find the top vendors, figure out if I need this, go down there. So I can be so far down that path that if I talk to if and when I have to talk to a sales rep, if that sales rep isn't bringing value from like the minute we engage in this conversation, if you are trying to put me through your selling process, like this is why I think all these methodologies are in trouble, because no methodology is agile enough to address engaging with the client with value at every single stage, regardless of where they are. And I think that's the problem right now, is that we've turned sales into an assembly line. And okay, let me ask my BANT questions. Let me ask my medic questions. Let me give you my demo. Let me wait a week till I get my SE in here. The tolerance for that is going to go away. And so that's what I'm genuinely worried about here, is that how long is it going to take for a 2-person shop here like me to realize I'm never going to talk to a sales rep again, to then creep into the SMB, to the mid-market, to the enterprise. I mean, I'm already seeing AI bots buy, right? Yeah. Search has changed, like AEO. We've gone from a search engine to an answer engine, and people are getting answers of who's the top sales trainer. Now, thankfully, I've been in the industry for 20 years and my name pops up. But it literally, like if you put in, Claude, Perplexity, and say, hey, top B2B sales trainer, if you're not on that list, you're not getting a call. You're not getting brand recognition. So I think
what would be worse, though, is for your business, if there are no more salespeople.
Oh, of course.
I don't think that that's going to happen. No. But those salespeople that exist will have to be retrained. They will have to become more artsy and human again, yes, but also be able to integrate with the 95% of the decision process that's already being made by way of AI. Yeah. And not, you're not free to act and go through like you said, there's no appetite for a process. Right. You need to be speedy and fast and towards the decision, but you also can't sort of start a whole new process. You have to integrate yourself with your messaging, your positioning into everything else that's already there. And I think that's the tougher part for salespeople these days.
Absolutely. I mean, now on the flip side, so yes, a sales rep's going to be still relevant. Yes, of course. But I think we're in Pareto's rule here across the board, 80-20. I think 20% of sales professionals are going to be invaluable, because these tools, because again, going back to search engine versus answer engine, that's a dangerous thing, right? Like search engine, we can all argue that Google fed us whatever it felt like giving us, but it was at least a perception of choice. I at least had to read maybe an article or two to come up with my opinion. Now you put the question into AI and it just gives you the answer. And for guys like you and I, it's a superpower because we're curious, right? Like, tell me more about that. Give me an example. I don't know. Like, source check this, all that. But for the vast majority of people who are unfortunately lazy, they're going to just take that answer, copy, paste, and send. And in that scenario, I don't understand the value of the human.
You're right. But that's where we have to reinvent ourselves as humans and be able to provide that value. Yep. And salespeople 30 years ago, their sales was nothing about process. It was all about the art and stopping in for a coffee and bringing donuts and whatnot. I mean, then it changed to very much a process and numbers driven game, and now it's changing again. And ultimately, I think it's a good thing that things are changing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, the laziness factor of what we were able to get away with for over the past few years is definitely it was always kind of insulting in the first place, but it was tolerated. The challenge is now it's not tolerated, and the challenge is that this AI stuff is moving faster than anything I've ever seen in my career. So what was relevant 2 weeks ago or even last week is now something else has popped up. I think the biggest challenge right now that I'm seeing for sales reps is this whole indecision factor, in the sense that Jolt Effect wrote about this, the challenger sale, challenger customer, Jolt Effect. It's the third in that series. I don't know if I love their answer to the problem, but they absolutely nail the problem. And the idea is, everybody says, no decision is our biggest competitor. It's like, well, yes, and it's actually indecision. And the reason is things are moving so fast right now, and there are so many other options that people are scared to make decisions. right? People, it's just, so there's a fear factor here because the risk is everything. Even if you're a solution, you do the gap selling, right? Like current state, future state, the gap and the price, like all that stuff. Even so, once that's determined, I have to go from here to here. Well, now all I'm thinking about is all the bad implementations or the other options here. So my risk. That's why you're seeing more people involved in the buying process, because it's like, hey, Henning, I need your eyes on this, and so I need your eyes on this, because I don't want to be the only one making this decision. So I think that's the biggest challenge right now. I've personally never been in a sales environment where you can do everything right, and this is happening to me right now. Alignment, CRO, executive, implement, got it, pain, problem, impact, all that. And like a week later, sorry, man, priorities changed. Got to do this. Sorry, man, this happened. It's like, oh, we got to push this till Q3. And these days, if you tell me you got to push this till Q3 or 4, I'm close losting that sucker and not even thinking about it anymore. So I think that's is adapting to meet the moment and figuring out how to, be a problem solver for people, which is what sales is ultimately all about, and figuring out a way to navigate and leverage AI to help us. I mean, the meeting prep that I'm doing now, the insights that I gain for customers before even walking in the door are through the roof. So if you learn how to use this the right way, like I said, it's a superpower, right? I mean, the thing I think every rep is, Ironman is the vision that you have to have. Because if you think of Iron Man, right, like as Tony Stark, he had everything. He was smart, he was good looking, he was rich, but if he had to fight those aliens, he'd get killed, right? So he had to create the suit. And the suit, I don't know if you remember the first one, it was kind of good, but it was clunky and it fell apart in the desert. He didn't become Iron Man until he added Jarvis. And so now you have the human, the suit, the tech stack, whatever it is, and the AI, and now you can do some damage. But if you're not doing all three of those, you're in some trouble these days.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the future for your sales training business, JB Sales. You don't sound like you're aggressively pursuing to get back to 20 people and $6 million.
God, no.
No. So what's the future?
So I've learned my lesson. I built a business because I could, not because I wanted to. I rode that wave. And, I've also learned that one of my biggest issues is accountability. I don't like holding myself accountable. I have a hard time holding others accountable. And that's the good news about AI, is I can create systems that hold me accountable without having me be accountable. So that's the reason I like it. And I can still do coaching now and use that as the guide. But, I'm reinventing yet again. At this point, sales training, as it historically has been, I think is winding down pretty fast. The traditional sales training of, doing this day-long thing or whatever. So right now it's about, instead of like 2 packages, I used to have filling the funnel and driving to close, which are like prospecting and everything else. Now it's what component of those, where does it fit? And also I'm doing a CRO or sales leadership advisory offering right now, because I could train the team all day long, but if there's not alignment, right, with systems, RevOps, all that stuff, training's a waste of time. And so how do I use AI to, train the fundamentals of teams, but also augment with AI so I can fit into other people's systems? And how do I work with the executive crew to share the 30 years of experience of pattern recognition of things that I've seen? And also I just obviously, at this point in my career, I'm exposed to a lot of cool stuff. Almost any tech, I want to, people are reaching out, hey, John, could you take a look at this? Could you give me your feedback on that? So I get to see a lot, and which puts me in a position to be able to give guidance to executives who are trying to navigate through this AI mess like the rest of us.
Yeah. But isn't that all of what you just described an opportunity to grow? Isn't there a large number of business owners and founders out there who need exactly that kind of skill set to help them along?
I think so, but finding them and getting them, it's just like anything, like the needs there, but how do you find them, and how do you get them to open up their pocket and put their money down on that? That's a different story. So I'm going through revamping my ideal customer profile, testing out messaging. Like right now, when this type of thing happens in a market, like 2020 it happened, 2023 it happened, and it's happening again. I go into full blown prospecting mode. And when I say that, I always prospect, but hardcore, I hadn't done that in a long, like until those points. And that's why I train prospecting, because I tell reps, like, if you genuinely learn how to prospect, and I don't just mean cold calling, right? But like relationships and, networking events and partnerships and all that stuff. If you really learn how to do that, you'll never go hungry. And so I do it for, obviously, to find revenue, but I also do it for kind of some market research. Right now, I am blitzing the market and having meetings with pretty much anybody and everybody who will say yes to a conversation with me, just to kind of get a temperature check on what's going on out there. Like, where are people spending money? What is the real problem here? What are the issues? Are there any commonalities that I can see at this point, so that I can kind of adjust my messaging, my approach, my ICP as I learn? So I'm really active right now on prospecting and using the tools and diving into AI and learning how to use it without losing the human touch. Learning how to transfer that knowledge and curiosity to other people, so that they can, get better and try to stay as relevant as possible for this. Because I think we're in a 2-year transition right now. I can't tell you what the after 2 years looks like, quite frankly. I mean, there is
ask that next. What does the future look like?
I think maybe dystopia than utopia. Well, if you ask, well, do you want to? I'll take the politics out of this, being here in the United States, as the dumpster fire that it is. But I think the future is, it's going to be interesting. I actually personally think that the future is going to be entrepreneurship. I think the likelihood of us having full-time jobs with salary and benefits and all that fun stuff, I think that's not going to be the main thing. I mean, think of the gig economy already, right? People are Ubers and all that stuff. So I think each one of us is going to have our specialty, our skill set, whatever, and then plug into projects and companies, 6-month contract, 3-month contract, whatever it might be. So I think the cool thing about AI right now is, if you are curious and you're a creator, man, the world is yours. You can vibe code an app, you can do whatever it might be. But if you're just one of those status quo people that are, kind of that B level, which I thought we always needed B level just to do the job, right? Because if we had all A types, we'd rip each other apart. Unfortunately, the B level person that's just trying to get by, those are the ones that are in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. So if you can orchestrate agents, because that's the other thing. Like, the thing that I read recently, and I forget who said it, gave me a little bit of hope, was, he said that the reason he didn't think that AI was going to take over jobs is because AI, as much as everybody says, is that AI is really good at doing tasks, right? You tell it to do a task, as a process. You go here, 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 go do that, and it'll get creative along the way, but you got to tell it to do the task. But it's not very good at doing a job, because a job encompasses far more than just tasks. Right? There's nuances. There's great. So you need people who have the business acumen, who have the insights, to be able to orchestrate the agents that are all going to start doing the work for us, instead of just augmenting what we do. Because that's the transition I'm seeing right now. AI has come on scene, and a lot of us are using it to be more efficient. But it's augmenting my skill, right? Very soon we're going to get to the point where AI, the agent's just going to do that thing. And so you need somebody who can look at that and make sure, A, it's doing it right, B, it's not lying, because it lies all the time, and human is the last mile, right? Just to kind of give it that sniff test before it goes out the door, whatever it is. So again, I think we're probably going to flex here in the next couple of years, up and down. Companies are going to hire still traditional stuff and whatever and figure it out. The smart ones are going to retool and re-educate their employees, the good ones at least, and then empower them with AI, so that they can start to, do the work of 10, 20, 30 people and probably not hire as much. I think entry-level positions in any part of the organization are in deep, deep shit. And I say that because now that I know what I can do with Claude Code, pick a profession and tell me what the entry-level job responsibilities are of that profession. And me with zero experience in that industry could probably do it better than that kid coming out of college, quite frankly. So that's what I'm trying to figure out here with my interviews when I do my podcast, is like, you and I grew up doing the hard work, right? The grind. Like, I don't know about you, but I was like writing hand notes, knocking on doors and all this stuff and all that stuff that I didn't really enjoy, right? But it put me in the position where I am today, where I can have a conversation without a script. I know when to call bullshit on, that type of stuff. So all that was important for me to get, like, all that context gave me the business acumen here. if all that can now be done by AI, better, faster, cheaper than any entry level, then my questions are like, where are the fundamentals going to come from now? And actually, more interesting is, what are the fundamentals anymore?
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure. So we have to. I think we have to retool our entire education system. My daughter's 15 years old. She'll graduate. She's graduating she's getting out as sophomore year right now, like today. And 2 years. I don't even know if college is going to be a thing in 2 years, because the traditional college model is, again, here in the States, is, you go to college, they fill your brain with a bunch of stuff, and then you go out into the world and people pay you for the knowledge in your brain, right? Well, when IQ is now a commodity on demand, what value prop does college have, right? So it's a social education, absolutely, but an actual education. So if these colleges don't literally adopt AI now and start integrating it to show these reps how to use it the right way without losing the human, without skipping to the answer, that's what's going to need to happen to empower a workforce that is already getting annihilated by AI and is already better, quite frankly, than the vast majority of entry level positions, and it's going to get better than the experts as well. I mean, I don't even want to talk about artificial superintelligence, because that's just a whole nother level of I don't know. That's why when you hear Sam Altman, oh, we got to win the AI war. I'm like, win what? Win irrelevance? Tell me a point in human history where there's any type of if you look at us as a species, can you give me any example where a dumber species controlled a smarter one? I mean, the only example is a child. It's the only example where a child dictates what a much smarter, more capable, stronger thing does. But other than a child, you know what I mean? So if it's going to be that much smarter than us, you honestly think we're going to control this thing? I have my doubts.
John, thank you. We're at the end of the 30 minutes. Definitely a candid look at a lot of different things, including how to build, scale, and shrink a business.
Can I give you a sign of hope, right? Because I don't like ending on negative.
No, go ahead.
Here's my hope. I believe AI was definitely made in our image, right? It is artificial us. I still believe, as crazy as this world is, that there are more good people on this planet than bad people on this planet. Fundamentally, I think there are more good people than bad people. So if AI was made in our image, then I just got to believe that there's going to be more good AI than bad AI that comes out there. And so that's why what I'm doing is I'm trying to use AI for good. I'm trying to use AI to educate, to learn, to build, to create, to make a positive impact. Because you can be a force multiplier with this stuff. Yes, all the data centers and the environmental impact, but if I could use that to then create solutions for data centers, environmental impact, and all that stuff, then maybe, just maybe, we can kind of get through this mess that we're in and over to a much more healthy, positive way of empowering humans to be human.
How can listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is the website, because everything's on there. So my LinkedIn profile, my YouTube, my Instagram. So it's jbarrows.com, jbarrows.com. Obviously, you can find me on LinkedIn. I can't, unfortunately, this sounds like a humble brag, but it's not. It's I hit the 30,000 limit on LinkedIn, so I can't accept any connections. But you can follow me. You can DM me. I'm out there. I post free content all the time on all my channels. And I'm just trying to do my best to help elevate the profession and for those people who are willing to put in the work and want to get better.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for being our guest here on the VE-Cast, the Next Stage CEO.
Thanks for having me.